Hello, world, and welcome. This is the Entrepreneur Wilderness Radio Show, and your host today is Oyeno Alobada. And my guest today is Philip Lomboy. And to give you some background to Philip Lomboy, he is the president of Miami Marketing Group, whose service also include No Hassle Videos, Done For You video marketing service, and Autopilot web events, an automated webinar service for speakers and authors. Previously, Philip spent 12 years as a corporate solutions consultant, working with companies varying sizes from small family-owned businesses to Fortune 500 companies to analyze and basically improve their internal processes. Since selling his first product online in 1999, he has helped businesses owners leverage new media from website development and copywriting to product development and launches. In 2005, he co-founded, let me just get it straight, Burnt Fat, is that right, Philip?
That's correct.
Yeah. Burnt Fat, or one of the first independently produced video podcasts on food and cooking, which has been featured on Howcast, Lefango, iFood TV, and G4 TV. Philip now dedicates his time educating and consulting businesses owners on how to increase their profits with automated marketing strategies and solutions. Also, he is the author of Bodybuilders in Tutus. I want to hear about that later on. And 35 other obscure business boosting observations. Welcome, Philip Lomboy. How are you today? Okay, so out of the gates, I mean, being a consultant and dealing with family-owned businesses to Fortune 500 companies, I mean, what is that? That must be a very unique experience, because they have to be different in the way you have to analyze to improve the internal processes of these companies.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, the fundamentals never change. Business is business, right? I mean, if you're for any business, if you're making more, like bringing in more than you're spending, then you're doing pretty good, right? Now, the processes and the systems that they have in place might get more complex as they get larger. Obviously, you have a lot more people to deal with, probably have many more customers, but ultimately it comes down to that. And of course, psychology, right? I mean, we're all people, whether you're working for a large company or working for a family business. When I speak to a client, it's going to be dealing with people. I'll tell you one of the biggest differences, though, given those similarities, the biggest difference between typically a large company, large electronics company, or I've worked across the board, but compared to a smaller business, a family-owned business, is how many hats you have to, not so much hats, but how many people you have to deal with in terms of a decision-making process. Now that goes through sales or evaluating what they're doing, but typically for a larger company, you have a lot more people that have a say in the decision-making process, particularly in the realm of sales. So if you are looking to, as an entrepreneur looking to sell your product or service to a larger company, typically it means that you have to shake a lot more hands and have a lot more conversations with different people versus you're working with a smaller business, family-owned business. Maybe you have to speak with one person or two people at the most. So that's really I'd say the biggest difference between the two for me.
Okay, so basically there's more, what we would say in bigger companies, there'll be more bureaucracy, and in smaller companies there'll be less bureaucracy, but would it be much more chaotic, would you say?
Well, I mean, chaos is a matter of like how that's just a matter of how you're able to deal with all the, to juggle, right? I mean, there's the dynamics between the different people that you have to deal with. So that's something you always have to keep in mind, whether it's the dynamic between a business owner and her husband or children, and that's a microcosm you have to deal with, versus the dynamic between the head of one department versus another department versus the CEO or CFO of the company. So yeah, I mean, typically, if it's such that you have a lot more people and relationships you have to manage, then gets a bit more. It makes it easier if you know how to juggle a lot more balls. I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, so take us through some of the parts, because most of my listeners they they probably have worked for big companies, but when they strike out on their own, they normally turn into your mum and pop family owned business. What is there a common theme in terms of is there a common problem across the board with family owned or small businesses?
Family owned versus company, like larger companies.
Yes, yes.
Well, I mean, I think for any business, the challenges are pretty much going to be the same. Again, the fundamentals never change, right? I mean, like for my specialty, it's in sales and marketing. I look at other processes as well, but those are the biggest things that I typically work with my clients on these days. But I mean, people still have to bring in business. People still have to, make sure they retain their clients, hold on to them for as long as they can. They still have to get new clients. They still have to develop their products and services so they remain competitive. So I mean, those are dynamics. Those are themes that are going to be consistent whether it's a small company or a large company. I'd say for a smaller company, if we talk about a mom and pop shop, I mean, typically we're talking about a business that has a local presence, meaning that most of their business, most of their revenue comes from within 5 or 10 miles of where their physical location is.
Okay.
So, well, it's like a restaurant, or even a local professional like a lawyer or a chiropractor or a dentist. So that's kind of, I mean, they can get fairly big too, 6-7 figure businesses, but they're typically dependent upon their local economy in order to bring their revenues in. Whereas larger companies, typically they're going to be multi-state, multinational, and they have those complexities to come into the mix as well. So, but now it is possible, of course. I mean, some of my clients are very small. I mean, they maybe have less than 10 employees, maybe less than 5 employees. 7-8 figure businesses, and they are multinational, right? In terms of like where they get their clients, not necessarily they have physical locations there, but their business is set up such that they're able to work with clients, get customers from across the globe. So it just depends on like the model. If we're looking at specifically a certain type of business or industry, then it's going to have its own little idiosyncrasies that you have to pay attention to.
Okay, so outline for me some of the problems that as a client, as a would-be client, what would I be saying to you in order for you to sort out my internal processes?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's for any business, I come in with where do you want to be, where are you now, what's keeping you from where do you want to be.
Okay.
And if everyone's going to have their own takes, they're going to have their own opinions about that, whether they're correct or not. I mean, it's a matter of diving deep into the answers they give, and coming down to the real truth of it. Because a lot of times, whether it's a C-level, what we call CEO, CFO type, CIO type person, or a local dentist. They have their own perceptions of what their challenges are, and it may or may not be the case because they're so invested in them. I like to use the analogy of a tugboat, right? Mm-hmm. Say you're a tugboat captain, and you're caught in the middle of a storm, and you see all this water coming into the ship, and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I got to do? I mean, I've got my crew there, I've got to keep my ship from sinking, I've got to bail water, and it's difficult. Like you're so busy doing all that you can't easily find a way out of the storm. But then you get somebody like a Coast Guard person, right, in a helicopter above, and said, hey, you know what? If it's okay for you to stop bailing water, if you just take this way around, go forward, go starboard this way, and then act within a few minutes, right?
Yeah.
I typically play that Coast Guard person in the helicopter, like, this is where you've got to go. This is the real story. You think it's about bailing water. You think it's about trying to keep the water out of your boat, but it's not. You want to get to the calmer water so you can concentrate on more important things, right? Ultimately, I mean, obviously bailing water in the moment is important, but then it's not where you want to be for the rest of your life, right? You
Right.
want to go, you want to tug larger boats, you want to do your job. If you're an entrepreneur, you want to have more freedom, you want to have more time with your family, you want to contribute to the causes that are important to you, and you're thinking about, oh my gosh, I can get my next client. I mean um, that's not where you want to be for the rest of your life. You don't want to be thinking, I need one more client, I need another client, I need another client. No, you want to focus on the things that drove you to becoming an entrepreneur in the first place. You had this grand vision. Unfortunately, it's most entrepreneurs, and myself included. I mean, I'm not any of this stuff. We all have the same themes that we're going through. Um, but if you're focused on just getting that next thing, the thing in the moment, then you're not necessarily any closer to the real reason that you got into the business in the first place.
Which is ultimately most entrepreneurs, what you call it, promised land is to, sell that big company and retire young with lots of money in their back pocket so they can go live their life, basically.
Man, I mean, like, that's something that every single person has. I mean, I have a 12-page initial questionnaire that I give to prospective clients. So I'm qualifying them to see that whether I want to work with them. At the same time, they're qualifying me, right? But the things in there is like, why did you get into business in the first place, right? And what is it that you really want? And that's both in the personal side and the business side. And it really have to give compelling reasons, at least for me, to feel that I want to work with them. Some people say, hey, yeah, I mean, I'm in it, I want to get in, flip it, and go, right? It's kind of like the real estate, like, okay, let me, set something up, get it going, or something that's kind of lagging right now, make it better, and then flip it, right? I have one of my friends. That's what her family does. They start restaurants. They run it for 6 to 8 months, and then they just flip it, move on to the next thing, right? So they get a little bit of cash flow, and then they wait to sell it and get a big windfall. But some folks, I mean, that's their passion, that's their life. They want to be in it for the whole life. Why they wanted to do it. So I mean, each person has their own goals, and we have to approach them accordingly. Yeah.
So sometimes what I get from most people that I know who are either, they're on the journey to entrepreneurship or looking to start out, I always warn them and say, make sure you don't hijack your own goals. Would I be correct in saying that? Because sometimes they initially go in for one thing and then they end up doing something completely different.
Well, it's like life, business, much like life, is a moving target, right? I mean, it's always changing. I mean, you can't really say that. I like to think of it as like when people set goals, they just stick so much to it. But the challenge is if you're on a train and you see that I'm setting off from point A to point B, but you don't know until 3, 4, 5 months or years later that there's a brick wall between A and B. I mean, are you going to say, oh, no, I told myself I'm going to stick to it and go, and run into the brick wall, or are you going to think about other things that you might want to do? Maybe jump off the train, or get on another track, or even just stop the train completely. So, I mean, that's something where, ultimately you got to, especially as an entrepreneur, because you have the flexibility to do it, you should exercise your ability to choose what path you want to go down. Now, whether it's the same path that you set for yourself 10, 20, 30 years ago, or a path that you say, okay, well, I just read about this thing that's happening now. Maybe it's time for me to change direction.
So basically, you try and bring back, business people back into the reality of what it is that they initially set out to do. Because sometimes what I've done in the past myself, I've caught myself up in just becoming a workaholic. Like you said, always thinking about the next customer, and you let your personal life slide, and you think that's what